All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I'm joined by a old friend of mine, used to teach at this academy, great gentleman, Christian Woodmansee, the Dream Killer Jiu-Jitsu World Champion. He holds a lot of titles: business owner, father, husband. We'll get into it in just a moment. Right before we do, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties transitioning from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. The simplest way to reach out to VetLife is through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, we'll get right into the episode with the Dream Killer. So for the people that don't know you, Christian, don't know your background story, I want to start from the very beginning. We're both East Coast boys. You know, I was born and raised in Philly, born on Brill Street. Take us all the way back. You know, let's talk about early life, and then we'll slowly build up to, you know, the point where you find jiu-jitsu, you know, the lessons we've learned, and we'll make this a stellar podcast. So take it away.
Cool. Well, first, appreciate you having me. So it's awesome to be here. Finally, after watching all of them, I can get to be on here. But yeah, East Coast as well. Right outside of Philly, New Jersey. Basically bounced around the majority of my life. You're aware of it. Nobody else really is, depending on if they're listening. But rough childhood. You know, didn't have a great home life. Single mom type of thing. Basically just always kind of raised myself. Life was hard. Just kind of sucked it up. But created really strong habits. Majority of them may have been positive. Some were bad. And then got into different types of things that allowed me to focus on being by myself and kind of rationalizing things, why it was natural for me to not experience what all other kids were experiencing, you know. But it made me who I am, so it was positive looking back now. But yeah, I didn't really do anything much as a kid. Didn't do any martial arts. I didn't really play too many sports. I wasn't really into too many things just because of my ability to kind of go and do them and have that support. But yeah, I mean, I did my best. I wasn't great at school, wasn't super smart, wasn't really into it. I was always just kind of like, I'm just here because I have to be. But like, again, I didn't have a lot of strong structure and support system at home, so it wasn't like being redefined. No fatherly figure, no man figure in the house, you know. Yeah, and I think I started playing paintball when I was like 13. Did that, was really into it, and found like a passion into it. Allowed me to kind of travel and get away from my nightmare of home life. And I did that pretty consistently until I was around like 19 or 20. And that was right when I found jiu-jitsu. So I started training jiu-jitsu in Philadelphia. It was a Balance affiliate that was at a Muay Thai academy. It was a brown belt at the time, and yeah, I was like, oh, I thought it was a little gay. I was like, I don't want to play touch butt in the park. There's a bunch of dudes sweating. Like, I literally thought it was something that I was uncomfortable with physically, and I tried it out and I loved it. And as soon as I did it, I was like, I don't want to play paintball anymore. I don't want to think about school anymore. I just want to do jiu-jitsu all day. And that's basically what I did. So I basically pretty much took less and less chunks out of college and did less and less and less every single day. Changed from semester, having less credits, et cetera, et cetera. Started teaching, went through the ranks, and, you know, everything now is in the past, but never really had a job. Jiu-jitsu's been my life. Been teaching my whole life, or traveling and competing. So fast forward 13 years. Yesterday was my 13th year anniversary, so jiu-jitsu now is everything that it is, but it's taken me all over the world, taken me all over the country.
A lot of people talk about jiu-jitsu as like a form of therapy. Mm-hmm. Talk about that for you, because obviously coming from the childhood that you did and the family structure that you saw, you didn't really have the father figures to build you into the man that you are today. You didn't get to see a successful version and say like, hey, I need to model myself like this. Jiu-jitsu was a therapy for you, and for the people that know my story, it was a therapy for me. Talk about what about jiu-jitsu changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, so like, I found jiu-jitsu when I was older, right? So being a 20-year-old dude, I wasn't really a great human being, but I was definitely growing, but I still, you know, never really understood some things. I was adopted at like 15 too, so it was really challenging for me. I didn't have a father figure in my life until I was literally like 15, 16 years old, but the majority percentage of my life, I was never enjoying where I was. I was never in control of my positioning. I was like, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? And jiu-jitsu kind of gave me this thing and understanding of like, oh man, I can kind of like take control here, you know, and being able to be on the mat for that hour and a half and being able to be in really bad position and get out and then take good position was truly mind-blowing to me. It became a very toxic addiction. I became obsessed. And I wasn't even that good either. I mean, I guess like literally day one I got bit and I'm like, oh man, like, it was that realization right away. So to be able to experienced for such a long point of time, like, I'm getting dealt these cards, this is all I have. Jiu-jitsu basically taught me that I can basically fold and reshuffle, or, you know, try to use my mind to basically let people think that while I'm betting and I'm playing odds and I'm calling it bluff, but I'm still winning my hand, you know? So it started to show me the opportunity. It started to give me the ability to create opportunity from bad situations. And that was part of my jiu-jitsu for a while. I was very reaction-based. I was very good at escapes. I was very good at taking bad and making it good. And I think that kind of like greatly was related to my life and like how it was working out. And, you know, and then it literally, like I said, it transpired, and I love the mental side of it, and it grew into what it is now. So to be able to see how great jiu-jitsu gave me this feeling internally and my physical life, I was like, oh man, this is all I need, and that's all I took, you know. And I just literally took a huge shift, and it was a 180 after that.
I want to make you go back for a second, because a lot of people will never understand what it's like to be not having a home and a family and, you know, a place of security and comfort to grow, to express themselves, to be themselves while forming your identity in this world. You know what I mean? When you're a child, you kind of figure out, like, I'm good at things, I'm allowed to be successful. Like, you formulate so much about who you are. What was it like going through that experience all the way to being a young man? I mean, 15 years old, you think you're an adult at that point, and now you get stuck in with a new family, which could have been the best people on earth, but it's still a bizarre situation.
It's a complete switch of things.
Because you have one experience in this life, and you're living a certain way, and by the point of 15, you're kind of adjusted to it.
Yeah.
That's, you know what? Send whatever you want. I'll find a way to deal with
hard.
it.
Yeah.
You were hard. You were hardened for sure. You were probably jaded. You were probably kind of cut off from a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, these people come into your life that are wonderful people, right? I mean, you have a very close relationship with your parents. What is that like for someone, and how did that, you know, was it very rough initially? Just talk about that part of your life, because I think a lot of people don't experience that.
Yeah, I mean, you hear like what's normal for other people, right? So I was never impacted by how bad it was, because it was normal, to me. You know, like, what's normal to the spider is like chaos to the fly, or whatever that expression is. You know, like, so for me, I was just like, oh, what do you mean you get a birthday cake and you blow out candles? You know, like oh, what do you mean you get presents for Christmas? You know, like, what do you like? I was just like, oh, okay, like, I just didn't, you know. So like, it wasn't something that I was like, that I experienced and it was taken away. I just never got it, you know. I never had a father, you know. I never had a father figure that was like, hey, this is what you should do in this situation. Like, I never had, like, I literally raised myself. I literally spent a majority of my life mute, because there was no one to talk to, you know. So it was always just me and me. And I experienced, I mean, like, and like I said, I mean, my birth mother was very mentally ill, you know. She eventually committed suicide when I was 21. I mean, but I would literally be dead asleep in my bed, and the lady would walk in and beat me with an extension cord. And I have no idea why. And like, but it began like, I was hardened, you know. And I got to the point where, like, I was just like, oh, like, it doesn't even hurt. Like, I was like, you can't take that from me, you know. Like, there's something here that I'm just not enjoying, you know. Like, so I mean, it was what it was at that point in time, but I never experienced anything different. So when I got adopted and I got a father, I mean, I was a man when I had a man in my life. Literally, like, that point in time, I had a car. I had money from paintball. Like, I was, like, taking care of myself anyway. But, like, he had a dude who was, like, I literally remember one of the first pivotal conversations with my father. He was like, go take out the trash. And I was like, fuck would I take the trash out for? And he's like, this is how it works. See the food on the table? I bought it. Your mother made it. Someone does dishes, you take the trash out. It's like, you take the trash out. It's not my trash. And he's like, well, this is a family. This is how this works. And, like, I mean, like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm like, but, like, I'm a beat dog to a degree, you know? So, like, then I'm just like, I just didn't know any better. I'm like, nah, bro. Like, I don't know. You can't fucking tell me what to do, you know? And it's like, hey, like, my dad and my mom were very good with understanding that I sucked, you know? And they were kind of like, hey, we have to nurture this kid a little bit, you know? But, I mean, it took time for me to be like, oh, okay, like, that's normal? Like, what I'm doing is not normal, you know? And all my brothers were like, straight like out of a JCPenney catalog, corduroy jeans, and like tattooed, degenerate, fucking badass kid. Like, cursing, I was just completely opposite from my brothers. and I was the oldest one, and I'm like, I don't understand what this means. Like I had a great relationship with my mother because I always had a mother, and she gave me a love that I didn't have. And I was like, oh man, I completely confined in this. But I'm like, you can't have a man in my life now. It's like, there's no way. Like, bro, I'm the man. Like, I literally, when I started doing jujitsu, like there'd be times where I'm like, bro, I'll put you down, because it's just like, hey, it's just the way that it is. And like, even my father now, like we could have a moment where like I completely like just cry, But my dad's also not like a father where he'll hug me, but like a lot of times there's a pat on the back. Hey, fucking work hard, go do this. Great dad, but it was challenging, So my mother and I have a close relationship, but they were very understanding, and my birth mother created a lot of resistance in my adoption, like she showed up when we went to court to do the whole thing and all that other stuff, and they were always 100% behind me. So like, if it wasn't for them, a lot of it would have been potentially 10 times worse. They could have just given up, like, hey, this is too much. I don't want to do it. We've got 3 kids already, And I was always listening to the people in their circle, like, why would you do this? You don't know that kid. You're going to let him in your house? Like, what if he steals something? Like, man, my grandmother would come to the house, and she'd be like, why is this kid walking around with his shirt off, and he's got tattoos and blah, 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 like, this degenerate, and I'm just like, the fuck you? This is my house, And my dad's like, hey, like, calm the fuck down, like, but it was just such a shift of things, man. It's like being dropped into a different culture, a different language. You eat a completely different lifestyle. Like, I was like, I was lost. And I was like basically a child at 15 again, but I was already, like I said, I was already tough. It's like, man, like I survived. So like, you can't tell me how to live, and it was fortunate, but I mean, it was a battle. I would say like I didn't make great adjustments until I was like 22, 23, where I like became a person that I respected,
What started to cause that switch?
A lot of my relationships, so like being the guy that I was in high school, like I was always like, I didn't really get along with anybody, but I didn't like create waves with anybody, like I was friends with the popular kids. I was friends with the kids that were nerds, like I didn't fit in, but I didn't stand out to a degree. But like I just didn't make waves, but like I loved doing something, and I was really passionate about paintball, but like I realized that I just didn't like who I was, and I could see that in people that loved me. Now my parents and my family, I'm like, oh, I've got brothers that like care about me, even though like I don't treat them well. Like, hey bro, like wake up, this is you now, So they took their step, and they gave you unconditional love, and now that you have that support, it's time for you to do it, So but it took me years to realize that. Like, I mean, at 15, I'm still a child. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it didn't hit me enough to where it impacted me positively. But I just, like I said, I mean, I got to a point where I matured enough, and I had failed relationships with girlfriends and failed relationships, and I'm just like, oh, like, man, it can't be them. It's you. Take responsibility. Like, suck it up. Get back to jiu-jitsu. Like, you're responsible. You're at where you're at because you did it. Like, you didn't do something correctly and you're in a bad spot, or you did something correctly and you're in a good spot. Take responsibility for everything. Like, it's raining outside. Yeah, you don't have an umbrella. Like, whatever it may be, like, you're responsible. It just was just that time frame where I did it, and I invested into, like, understanding myself and having conversations with people and being around certain people where I literally just made the decision to be a different person and create those habits and have that discipline. And just so happens that that's when my jiu-jitsu excelled and my relationships excelled, and I met great people and made great connections, and I just further do that as much as I can every day.
Do you have any insight into, I'm trying to understand your parents and family structure more, because that's amazing. They had 3 children of their own, but they decided that they were going to adopt you. Have you ever had any deep conversations? Like, because they drastically altered the course of your life. Like, who knows what Christian Woodmansee would exist had those 2 people never ever got involved. Like, the path that you were on, who knows where that leads to. And you know what? At what point you ever reflect in the mirror and look at yourself and say, hey, you know what? You can be a better man than this. One day you're going to be a father and a husband. Like the guy that sits here today who, Nemi is 3 years old.
Crazy, right?
You know what I mean? And like, but these pivotal moments in your life shaped you to being who you are now. Do you have any insight as to like what made them pull that trigger, or why were they so relentless in the face of opposition? You said your mother was giving issues, and like why did they make that decision, or how did they even meet you? To make that.
Yep. So Craig, who is the oldest of the 3, like we're like 6 months apart, 6.5 or whatever it may be, but also played paintball. So we went to the same high school together. So like, again, maybe at a best acquaintances. Oh, hey, what's up, man? How are you? Good, cool. Like, again, like I wasn't into, I've never liked people anyway. You know, like I love people, but I hate them.
You were kind of cut off, man. You're on your island. You interact with people.
Again, yeah. I mean, I grew up mute. I wasn't socialized. I wasn't, you know, hey, it's a puppy, bring it to the park, let it get, like, I was just like, you go to school, right? And I'm like, well, what are we doing here? Like, I hate math. I hate it, like all this stuff. Like, these people are idiots. Like, you know, like, and all they do is talk about great life and how normal things are. And Santa brought him this, and I'm like, I can't relate to these people. We have nothing in common. So just kind of like, cool, whatever. But yeah, so like, again, he played paintball. I had never, ever, ever been to his house. I had never met his dad. I met his mom because she was paintball, and like she supported him, and he was there, and I was like, that's interesting, you know. And yeah, and like literally, it was so nonchalant. It was like one day he was like, hey man, like, you want to come over for dinner, you know? I mean, food was sparse, you know, things were tough. So I was like, maybe, yeah, sure, like, what are you thinking, you know? And he was just like, oh, just like come over and like have dinner with family. I'm like, okay, cool, no problem. And I went there and I was completely blindsided. Sat down, like, my first time having a family meal, 15-ish years. And like, I'm watching it and I'm like, what the fuck are these people doing? Because I didn't even go somewhere else and experience it. Like, this was my first time experiencing it entirely. Like, it was like a movie, you know? And they're all in the kitchen, they're all smiling, they're working around, they're grabbing their plates, and I'm like, man, like, this is, I literally thought that I was going to jump out of my skin. I was so uncomfortable, but I was just kind of like, you need to eat, so like, you should probably eat. And they all sat down and they talked to each other, and like, there was no TV on, and there was like communication and conversation, you know. And my father and my mother were like, how is this, blah blah blah. And they didn't even put like an awkward spotlight on me. It literally went around the table. How was your day, Scott? What was going on? Blah, 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 this, blah, blah. Oh, hey, Brett. Literally talking to each person individually, being very fair, right? And then it was like my turn. Like, oh, like, hey, Chris, like, my mom already knew I played paintball. So, like, that was something that we could easily talk about. But, like, I'm literally sitting next to this dude. Oh, I've never seen him. He's just this old fucking asshole, you know? Like, fucking Scrooge, right? That's my dad, you know? And he's just like, I'm like, man, like, there's an alpha here, and it's me, bro. You know, and he's like, and he's not alpha, but he's alpha, you know. But, and we had dinner, and it was, like I said, it was different. I enjoyed the food, you know, like it was different to be in. I wouldn't say like I was like, oh wow, I need to do this all the time. But I was just like what happened? But like, hey, cool. And my dad literally said, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you excuse yourself from the table because we want to have a family conversation? And I'm like, is this normal? Like, you know, I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know, like, cool, no problem. And I literally walked away, you know, and a couple minutes later, he brings me back in, and he was like, hey, so, we all talked about it as a family. Again, I'm just constant state of, like, questioning normalcy. And it was like, would you like to stay here? And I'm like, dessert? Like, what are you talking about, you know? And it's like, no, like, Craig shared with us, like what goes on with you, like in like your living situation and your life, and would you like to stay here? Because I was bouncing around a lot. Like, I would go to a girlfriend's house and stay for like 2-3 weeks. I'd go to a friend's house, I'd stay there. Like, it was just, no one cared what I did. I was like not a bad kid. Like, I wasn't like going around doing like, you know, like, but like it was awkward. So like, they're like, who's this? You can't let this kid stay with us. Like, so no one was like that. And these people invited me, and I was just kind of like, I'm not really sure, you know? And I was very hesitant because I didn't really know what that meant. And I ended up saying yes. And, you know, I didn't really have things anyway. You know, I was just basically driving my car, staying from place to place, couch surfing or staying whatever it may be, and stayed. And it's kind of like The Blind Side, that movie, where like the kid, like, he gets invited and he's just kind of like awkward, and he's like, I don't want to overwhelm him, and he tries to like leave, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Like, dinner, you know? And then it was like, oh, let's like go get you some clothes. And I'm like, all the clothes I had were the clothes that I got from paintball, like sponsors going to events, and they're like, here you go. But I'm like, oh, like, these are, I don't go clothes shopping for school. I got sponsorships that I had to work hard for in paintball, and they gave me stuff. You know, that's just how it worked. And oh, hey, you need a cell phone? what? You know, like it was just like too much, and I just felt very uncomfortable. And then my birth mother really got involved, and like I think she kind of caught wind that things were going on, and obviously she to some degree she was still my, you know, my mother, but they one day were like, hey, we would like to legally adopt you, and we want to do that for our desire and reasons, but also out of safety and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I mean, like, we did it, but it was like, man, it all, the way that it happened, it was almost like, it was too surreal. It's almost like fake. Like, you look back and it's like a weird dream, but like, it fit in very well. You know, like, I'm not even like great with other, even my brothers, but like, we just like, we all changed. Like, I like became a little bit more normal, and they became a little bit more open, you know? My brother would get a tattoo, you know, and he like changed his style and like listen to different music, and like, I was like, oh man, like I'm doing some type of like involvement in impacting these people, and I have to make sure I'm doing things the right way. You know, my dad was like, hey, you're the oldest, make sure you're being careful of what you're doing here. You know, like, oh, okay, you know, well, I disagree, but like, hey, go to colleges. But yeah, man, it was crazy, you know, and I feel very fortunate. I don't know what would have happened to me. I would imagine I would have ended up dead in jail or taking over the world anyway, but it was scary.
Before we get into your jiu-jitsu story more, were there any defining moments where you really started to formulate that family structure? Like, because it sounds like at first there was serious resistance, whether it was take the trash out. No, you take the trash out, bro. I can beat you up in a fight. You got to take it. But there's had to be defining moments where you really started to go, wait, like, this is my family. And that's a powerful part of your story. Do you remember anything that stands out in particular, or was it just over an accumulation over a period of time? You know, you're around these people, you're making impressions on your brother, you are developing a relationship with your new mother and your father, even if they're different, you know, nurturing a relationship and more of like an authority, yes, sir. Yeah. You know, do you remember any defining moments that you started to feel a part of the family?
Yeah, so like, I definitely felt that they involved me right away. Again, like I was like, oh, they're not like treating me like this awkward thing. I'm one of the bunch. That happened immediately, even before I was invited, and that's why I was like really, really emphasizing on like how like they talk to all of us as individuals and as a group. But in terms of me and like how my relationships went from what they were to what they were becoming, it was all like individual based. So like it was like my mother and I never like accepted the family as a whole all at once. I would experience them for whatever it may be. So Craig, who was the oldest with me, was the easiest because we had the most in common. We had paintball, we were in the same grade. We then spent time together. Like we would go to school together. Like it was super easy, you know? And then like as we graduated to the next grade, like then my second oldest brother was then in school. So like then we had more in common because now we were all driving to school together and blah, 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 whatever it may be. But each person kind of, I had to feel them out and know who they were first to be like, really, they all like gave me 100%, you know? And I was like, oh fuck, like it's on me now. But my dad was like the last one, you know? And I'm like close to the point with my brothers where like they ever need anything I would do from this like unconditional love, but like they all have their own lives too. They all have got their own thing. One still lives like close to home. One is in Chicago, and one's got his own family, his wife and a daughter. So I mean a son. So, but I mean like I was always hesitant. Like, hey, like fuck these people. They're gonna hit me with an extension cord when I'm sleeping. You know, like but it was. But like I mean, like I said, like it didn't go like overnight. Like there'd be times like where I didn't have problems with my mom, where I'm just kind of like I'd experienced things with my mom for the first time. Like man, like I literally took my mom to like the Huntington Beach NPPL event for paintball, and she was like blown away, because like Craig played paintball, but like he didn't play at the level that I was playing at. And she was like, and I was like, you're gonna come? Yeah, I'm gonna watch you. And I'm like, is that what moms do? You know, like and she came and it was really awesome, and she watched me, she was supportive, and I'm like, this is awesome, you know, but like there'd still be times where like I'd be like, hey, like don't do that, and she's like, hey, that's my job, you know, and I'm kind of like, no, and she's like, no, you don't get a say, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know. So and then there'd be times where like, hey, like you need to do this, and I'm like, oh no, and she's like, no, yeah you do, because that's your job, you know. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I was learning that structure. I was literally as we go. You know, like no one like sat me down and it's like, hey, this is how it's going to be from now on. It's just kind of like, you got to figure this as you go. But each person I connected with individually with something, you know, and we had time together because they had their whole lives together, and I was experiencing them for the first time. So Craig and I grew really, really close. Scott then, and then Brett, you know, and then my dad was the last one. But like me and my mom were like right away, you know, and they were all very accepting. But my dad, it was the hardest for side. Even I still have moments where it's hard with my dad, where like now I'm not only his son, and I'm also a father, and he's a grandfather, you know, and he'll tell me something. I'm like, hey, like, fuck off, you know, and he's like, oh, you know, whatever, blah blah blah. But they did their best. They did a great job, you know, and in terms of, not many people get to say it, but like I've had more than one group of parents and set of parents, you know, and I'm very fortunate to be like, hey, like, you know, these people are great people, you know.
Do you think this is going to make you a better father, husband, family man because of what you went through? Because like that young, hard, jaded kid coming out, you know, I don't know if you would be the father that you are today. I don't know if you would be the leader and the, you know, the one that sets responsibilities on other people. Do you think it was really important for your character development?
But I wouldn't go back and change a thing, not even from day one, you know, because I literally believe that everything just aligned up the way that it needed to have what transpired today, you know. I was always, you know, the first time basically we had like an authentic conversation, I'm like, hey, like, wife, baby, you know, and I've always been on that route. I've always been yearning to have a family, even before I got adopted, you know, like I was by myself, I was alone. I was like, I know that I can do great. I know what it's like to be a bad father. I know what it's like to be a bad mom, and I would love to then show myself that I know those things by doing it the right way for someone else. So, but yeah, I mean, it made me who I am. I am truly more grateful for the bad than I am for the good, because those bad things or create the opportunities. Like, I'm all about challenge. I'm all about, sometimes I'll even royally fuck myself over and create challenge just to grow, just because I need to, because I feel like it's normal. But if it wasn't for all those things, I literally, yeah, like I said, I have no idea what would be like. I don't know if I would have had jiu-jitsu. I don't know if I would have had a family, whatever it may be. But like everything literally that I have today is built around the premises of those pivotal couple of years in my teens of experiencing all the bad, not eating, hunger, trying to have a passion, not having support, and then getting adopted, having those things, and understanding that I had to change as a human being and doing it. So like, if it wasn't for those things, like, I mean, I would definitely be a huge piece of shit, I think. Yeah.
There's actually a ton of insight that you just dropped into. So many people walk around very jaded and very hardened, yearning or searching for something. And a lot of the times it's what they resist. You know what I mean? Your story is a perfect example of that. You were yearning for a family and to be loved and to be a part of a group. You know what I mean? But you were almost closed off by it as like, I don't need that. I'm good to go. I'm already. But really, when we allow that vulnerability, I guess we would call it, there's a strength in that. If more people would be vulnerable about the things that they want and desire, you know, there's a lot of progress to be made, which will make you much more fulfilled in the long run. And I agree with you in the way that when you go through really difficult times or tough situations, when you look back in your life, you're appreciative of that. You're thankful for that.
100%.
You would not be who you are today had you not had that story. You know what I mean? I like a lot of the court kids that I work with, one of the things I tell them is, listen, man, like, you guys are just going to have a way better story. Like, if you had a silver spoon, you know, your childhood was effortless, you were given $1 million when you turned 18, so what that you're successful? Look at it, the fact that if you climb from the bottom or you build a foundation for success from the bottom, you're meant to be great. You deserve to be great because of the story that got you there.
Agreed. I mean, it's like, stupid analogy, but like, it's like a video game. Like, you know, if you steer off course and you play on a different difficulty, you get more reward, you know, and it's harder, you know, and like, I think naturally I was just always understanding that survival was normal, you know, and I needed to survive, and I had to do whatever it took, and I was constantly always experiencing struggle and challenge, physically, mentally, emotionally, on a day-to-day basis, not like sporadically either. Like, my birth mother would cook dinner and like make something that you would like have for like literally like a birthday cake, but like it wasn't a birthday cake, it was like a cake, you know, for dinner, you know, and I'm like, oh fuck, like this is weird, you know, like I didn't have lunch or breakfast, and like we didn't eat dinner yesterday, so like I'm having cake for dinner, you know, like there was always irregular fucking struggle on a daily day basis, you know, and like that almost became my normalcy. And like for a while I was like, man, if I'm not experiencing this, there's something that's off, you know? And that's why like when you get to a certain point in time where like those things are moved away, I was like, what is going on here? Why is there no struggle at dinner? Why are you guys doing this? Like, are you supposed to hit me? Like, are you supposed to yell at me? Like, what are we doing here? So like when I wasn't getting that, I was like, hey, like I think this is what is normal, you know? But then I was like, hey, are you growing as efficiently and as fast as you could, you know? And then I saw that, and that's why I was like, hey, like now put more challenge on yourself, you know? So I agree 100%, you know, like, and I'm all about understanding that there's an easy way, there's a hard way, there's a harder way, you know? But like I never shied away from challenge. And it was easy too, especially at a young age, you know, like you can just be like, oh, just compartmentalize this and just not deal with it. And I always literally sat there and I fucking looked at the wall and I was like, oh, you're hungry? Like, fucking figure it out. I mean, as a 6-year-old kid, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Maybe it's good, bad, I don't know, but like it made me who I was.
Do you think there's any lingering effects from your childhood that are still negative that you have to work through on a regular basis? Or do you think through the process of becoming a real man and, you know, growing in jiu-jitsu, growing in life, growing in relationships, do you feel like you've really kind of closed some of the old chapters? It's time to just be thankful and appreciative, and you really feel like you have a good handle on things now? Or are there some lingering effects still that you struggle with on a, you know, let's say semi-weekly basis?
I mean, I just turned like 33, so I spent half my life in habits. So I've only spent basically that same amount of time creating opposite ones, you know? I definitely feel confident that I'm complete with everything in my past, you know? I said my dues. I forgave people who I felt that I needed to forgive, regardless if they felt sorry or not. I apologized to people regardless if they felt that I should apologize, and I got as complete as I could to where I felt like I was ready to remove that baggage off of me so I could officially move forward, you know? But I mean, naturally, you know, I've always got that voice. I've always got that demon. I've always got that thing that naturally has been there that was there for 15 years. And I've just got good at, there's another guy that's there as well, and he always talks after that guy, and that's the guy that we listen to now, you know? So like, and I do this with jiu-jitsu. I tell this people all the time, especially because I'm super big in the mental side. Like, I'm not about deleting something that's really strong. If it's a really bad habit, like it's like, man, it's ingrained in you. Like, I'm never gonna be taller than 5'4", okay? But I could wear shoes to make me taller if I really wanted to. So like, it's like I appreciate it, and like I do my best to like make that bad voice go away. But when he's there, I've created a strong positive habit of understanding that's my natural, negative, insecure, non-thoughtful voice, and he's there, and hear him, and then this is what you say afterwards. So like, it always shows its face when there's always challenge, you know? But naturally, like he's not there in the sense of where it's like it pulls me down, and I'm like, oh man, like this fucker shit up again, it's time to grow, you know? Like, I'm totally into it, you know? But yeah, but I mean like, again, like my birth mother committed suicide. My birth father died, I think, when I was like 13 or 14. So like, there were conversations that I needed to have with these people that I couldn't because they just weren't alive. So I had to have those conversations with them, with myself. And once I did that, like, yeah, a lot of things went away, you know. But like, man, this like I literally, I don't know how deep you go, but like the psychology that went into like my relationship with my birth father. Literally, my earliest memory as a child was when he left us, and what that did and the habits that created. I dealt with that until 2010 or 11, Purple Belt No-Gi Worlds Finals. And I was like still showing up, and I'm like, man, it's been quite some time here now. Like, what are we doing? And it was like, just, you got to handle it, you know? And like, once you handle it, then it's like, it's there, but now you know how to handle it. That problem's going to pop up. This is how you handle it. And like, I'm very fortunate for it because I became a person who is very appreciative of problem solving, you know? And like, if I didn't have that ability, like, I'd be screwed. I wouldn't be a good father because I can't prepare that person for life, you know? But very fortunate. I'm very happy about it.
let's talk about in your jiu-jitsu career. So you get going, you start finding things out about yourself, about the life, about, difficulty and struggle and all the lessons we commonly talk about or you'll see on memes. But you were very nomadic in your jiu-jitsu. Let's talk about where you really got a start in jiu-jitsu, and then you kind of bounced all over the map. You know what I mean? And it's probably similar to the childhood where you went somewhere and you found the lessons and the information that you needed, and then once that place had completed a purpose or a checklist, you were like, okay, on to the next thing. It's like, it's that desire for growth and challenge. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I never felt that one environment was adequate. For a decent part of my time, I was just like, hey, like, I'm looking for something. Is it here? No. I wasn't, instead of putting my time in and creating it, I was like, oh, I felt entitled. It should be given to me, I was always, in terms of the average person, good at jiu-jitsu. Naturally, I was advancing faster, doing things, so it was nice to have that, but I was big fish, little pond, like, oh, Grappler's Quest champion, like, no one gives a shit, like, hey, like, do you know what a world championship is? No. It's like, well, that's why you're an idiot, so left Philly, but I got my blue belt very quick. It was like 4 or 5 months. A year later, I got my purple belt, so I'm under 2 years for purple belt. Still sucked at jiu-jitsu, just good, and went and tried to do, like, go to an IBJJF event and get absolutely ragdolled. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was good at jiu-jitsu. No, you're not, And rather than staying home and creating it and feeling confident that I could create in that environment, I said, oh, I'm not getting what I need to here. I need to go. And I was already part of the loiter system at that point in time. And I wasn't directly related, but, like, I was, like, in it with Jared Weiner, JT. Like, I was training with these guys, but just I wasn't living in Camp Springs. It is what it is, but, like, I just wasn't in enough. I went to Miami, trained with Cyborg. And I'm like, well, you're an idiot because you had smaller training partners in Philadelphia. Now you're training with Cyborg. But Cyborg was a great dude. It was a great environment. It was a change. It was kind of a reassurance of, like, hey, like, you definitely don't know what you're fucking doing, and it doesn't matter where you go. You got to do it yourself. And I was only there for, like, basically a little bit less than a year, and I was still bouncing back and forth trying to do MMA, and there was no 125 division then. It was just 135. So I went to Vegas, and I linked up with Drysdale, and still had not won a single IBJJF event, still absolute hot dog water. No one cared. Disgusting. Worse, but I was still good. Better than most people. Just not the competitors. And was fighting MMA and felt good about that and kept bouncing back and forth. And, felt really good in Las Vegas. Felt like I was creating what I wanted to. Was completely ingrained into the affiliation, the association, the academy. Was involved in the business. Was helping out with marketing and advertising. Was teaching classes. Was structuring things. Was part of the like, I was like, oh man, like, I'm building a future here, And then we had a falling out, and I was like, oh, I don't have a choice. It's literally be uncomfortable here on terms that we can't agree on or leave. So I went to San Diego, and when I linked up with Andre, it was like it was the complete opposite of Las Vegas. It was like, oh, you're not creating anything here. You can't have an academy within 50 miles. And, oh, I'm like, oh, fuck, like, what are we going to do? But I knew my jiu-jitsu would get better, And once I linked up with Andre and I was part of the HQ squad, it was just like, it was back to that, like, grungy, gritty, frat boy type of mentality, living in the house with a bunch of dudes and just training jiu-jitsu 3 times a day, and it was super cool. But again, like, it was fucking tough physically, just getting beat up all day by world-class competitors. And at this point in time now, I'm a world champion and won Pans and won Euros, and I'm like, oh, I'm good too. And it's like, yeah, but now you're part of the All-Stars and you're, like, the last dude picked on the All-Star team. And it's like, oh shit, these guys are gonna beat the shit out of me every single day, And then it got to a point, this, where I was just like, man, like, what's going on? Why am I not getting my black belt? I'm not happy with my life. What's going on? I want to have a wife. I want to have a baby. I want to, like, go to the next level. Where's the next stage in what we're supposed to be doing in this life? Met you at ADC Trot. Was it Virginia? Where was it? Yeah, it was Virginia. Hit it off with you. Felt this bromance, and, like, man, like, why is he so intoxicated to be around, and what's going on? And I wasn't getting my black belt, and I was super unhappy, and I was like, man, if I'm not going to have the opportunities that I'm creating for myself. And Andre told me, like, oh, you want to be a black belt? Win Worlds again. And I just couldn't handle that pressure, and I couldn't win Worlds. I got third at Pans, and then I would take second, and then, like, I'm just like, fuck, I'm just not good enough, apparently, to be a black belt. Like, fucking I'll fight MMA again. Like, this just it. Like, I just give up on jiu-jitsu then. moved to Michigan, you know, and like, man, things were so different. Family environment again, you know, being around good people, being around people that cared, like people that was like, at HQ you had like cliques and you had like dudes, but it was still cutthroat. It was like, hey, like, I'm gonna kill you, and if you don't show up, like, I'm not even gonna give you the time of day to kill you anyway. So, and here it was just so much different. It was love, it was push. There was that growth of like, hey, we can make adjustments. We're going to do that as we grow, you know. And it felt great to be a part of something as a structure, you know. It felt good to be a part of something as not only a follower but also a leader, and I could switch off those roles, you know. Hey, it's my time to fight now. Like, James is my coach, you know. Hey, well, now I'm not fighting, you're fighting. So like, hey, I can help you out, you know. So it was really nice to do that. And then I met Brandy, you know. And I'm like, fuck, this is going to change everything. And we went to Outback, right? It was first day.
Outback in Brighton. Me, you, Stacy, and Brandy.
And Tucker and Emma.
And Tucker and Emma
right?
were there.
Man, I remember like literally having conversations, but I'm like, oh, this is it. Gonna be good to go. You know, this is the one. We're gonna get married. We're gonna have a baby, and that's it. But that I was like, oh, how are we gonna do this? Like, what do we do? And I really enjoyed Michigan a lot. You know, I still come here. You know, I enjoy the people. I love the Dannys. I love the Jameses. I love the Bryans. I love all the people that are here. You know, so it's really great to like come and like see Josh and see Alicia and see Stacy and see all these people. You know, and it's great. And it's just like have a conversation with Brandy, and I gave her the choice because I was tired of making choices. You know, and she's like, where should we have a family? And it's like, well, I want to be near family. And there's two choices. It was Michigan or it was Philly, you know, and she picked Philly. And she's also younger than me, and she was also growing, and she's also still growing now, and she wanted to be in Philly, and it was just like, okay, that's where we're going to go. But then as soon as we went, everything changes again. No more MMA, no more competing, because now it's like, okay, well, now we're preparing for a family, you know? So it's been cool. It's been fucking crazy, you know, and it's funny how it goes full circle. And now I'm in the place that I thought that I couldn't do it, you know, and I'm like, oh, this isn't the right place to do it. And it's like, well, hey, guess what? You did it. You know, we've got a successful academy. We've got students that are competing. We've got students that are happy. We've got an environment where Nemi can go to, and she can walk on the mats, and she can grow, and she can see we have a business, and it gives them that security, that ability to grow, and gave us the Logic affiliation and the ability for me to travel when I need to travel. So, I mean, it's truly weird to see how it came full circle. I hate Philadelphia. It's cold, you know, like the weather's crazy, and there's a specific grit to it that I'm just kind of like, I'm into it, but I'm not into it. You know, I'm more about the West Coast lifestyle of jiu-jitsu, but like there's challenge there, you know, and I appreciate that challenge, and that makes us grow, and that makes us better. And if I can do it there, it's a bigger reward, and that's where we're doing it.
So let's talk about, you know, you were completely on that mission since the day I met you. That like my family,
Day one.
my daughter. You did. You said, listen, if I
Day
could,
one.
you told me one time, you said, if I could get rid of all of my jiu-jitsu, but be guaranteed my family, my wife, my daughter, and that I'm happy as a father and as a husband, he's like, I would do it. And I knew then on that day, like, man, that's like the part that you need to get to. You need to open that chapter of your life. And so let's talk about, you know, you find Brandy, you find out she's pregnant. First of all, when you find out now, little Woodmansee is going to be on the way. Boy, girl, you're not sure. Brandy's pregnant.
Yeah.
And then talk a little bit about what that was like, because like I feel like so much of your life was working to that moment.
Yeah.
You had to travel around and become the man that was ready for that moment. You had to build the character that would fit the relationship for that moment. You had to evolve to that level. It happens. You meet her. She gets pregnant. And then fast forward me all the way to the birth of your daughter. I want to talk about what has changed in your life, how you've changed, how Nemi's changed you, how you picked the name Nemesis. I've never met another in my life. Like, let's just talk all about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought would have been the hardest thing, and it actually wasn't. Like, it was like, I was like, hey, I have an inclination, you know? It was like, you're about to receive what you want, you know? And it was like, what's the price? You know, and the price was, in my mind, my passion. It was jiu-jitsu, you know? And it was like, someone had my internal dialogue. It was like, if you want to have Brandy and you want to have a baby and you want to have security, it's going to cost you your career in competing. That's the trade. I felt like I was literally doing a deal. And I wouldn't say it was the devil or whatever it may be, but I felt like I was doing a deal. And I knew that was kind of like, that was the bad voice in my head telling me that stuff, and I was like sabotaging myself and thinking it is a negative thing. And like literally when Brandy and I found out she was pregnant, and I was just kind of like, it was literally the easiest decision I ever made in my life. It was just like, oh yeah, no brainer, we're good. I literally worked hard to be able to make that decision, and it was like that bad voice, that possible negative experience, and that positive one came in. It was like, this is what we've been working for, man. Like, you're good. You already won your titles. You've got this type of following. Like, you can travel, you can teach. Like, you're fine. This is what we worked for. This is this pivotal moment. This is why you're a 30-year-old dude having a baby, right? So it was a little scary, because it was like, well, I've never been a father, and like, am I gonna fuck up like my birth father did, or or whatever it may be? But it was so surreal. And then she like came out, and I'm like, that baby doesn't look like me. She looks like my wife. Like, it's a girl. I wanted a boy, like. And it's truly like, I had multiple conversations with Brandy where I was like, hey, I'm pretty confident that I'm gonna love you more than I'm gonna love the baby, but I'm gonna love the baby a lot. And this is gonna be a huge thing. And like, man, Nemi is like the amount of joy that baby brings to me. If I see a photo of her, if I see a video of her, and I probably don't do an adequate job of like displaying that just because of like my heartedness, but like, I'm like, oh man, so tough. Yesterday was her birthday, and we're in Michigan, and like that baby, that my wife, my world, and it's like, oh, like I should be there, but it's like, yeah, but like I'm there, I get it, and like I'm watching on FaceTime her blowing out her candles, and I'm like, man, like this is why I'm here, to forge that future for her, because when she gets to an age when she does know what's going on, and we can have great communication and conversation, I won't have to travel anymore. It can be a choice if I want to. She can come with us, but with COVID and all that stuff, it's really, really challenging. It used to take them a lot on seminars, but it's been a roller coaster of expectations that never happened. Man, she like bring her to the fucking hospital. She sleeps 12 hours through the night. Never had any problems with her. She was healthy. She was happy. Like I didn't kill the baby. Like I didn't drop her on her head. Like I'm like, oh, she's fine. Like we did all the things that people told us not to do that were perfectly fine. I'm like, man, she's a great kid. It's great. Like, and I'm like, oh, this is scary, but Brandy does a great job with her. She basically raises that baby, because I travel a decent amount of time, and I really appreciate my time with them. And it's like I said, it's the days that I struggle, where I have a tough day, and I'm like, hey, like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? And I'm questioning myself to keep myself in check. I think that's healthy to be like, hey, don't do this anymore. It's like, hey, like, are we doing this for the right reasons again? Like, just that reconfirmation of what's going on. It always goes back to them, and then I see that. I'm like, cool. And like, I'll be home in a couple days, and then we can hang out and do our thing. But if it wasn't for them, none of this would need to be taking place. I did jiu-jitsu for a family. And now that I've got a family, I still do jiu-jitsu, but the context has changed, and it's great to have that, and it's great to see that transpire. And 3 years went by super fast, and I mean, I'm terrified of certain things, but I mean, it's the best thing, and I'm appreciative and worked hard for it, but it's like, it's still surreal. Like, I can't believe it's real. I can't believe it happened. Yeah.
Let's talk about your academy in Philly, Logic Jiu-Jitsu. So you shout it out, talk about the academy, and you also have affiliates. I can't keep track because you're constantly traveling. Just talk a little bit about, how Logic's going, talk about the affiliates. You do travel a lot. You actually travel probably the most of anyone I know, except maybe the people with, a massive MMA fight team that are in a different state every week. I mean, you're constantly on the road.
I teach more seminars than anybody in the world, for sure.
Yeah, you are constantly going. So just talk a little bit about Logic, talk about your affiliates, talk about, what does a normal month look like for you?
Well, so obviously, as you know, I'm also now, because I'm not competing and I have that drive, and I have only adequate amount of time to make sure I'm focusing and doing the right thing, playing professional paintball. So, but Logic is great. Academy it's healthy. It's growing. It's thriving. The students are happy. They've got goals that they're accomplishing, and they're always making sure that they're communicating with me, and we have that expectation and whatnot. And it's very nice to be able to do that. But yeah, so I mean, a typical month is leave every Friday, come back every Sunday night. Sometimes I leave during the week, or once in a while, like, hey, I gotta go do a camp for a couple days, whatever it may be. But I try to always ensure that one day, as the affiliation has already done in the past year, ish that we get to a point to where I'm never going to teach seminars for anybody other than an affiliate, a Logic affiliate, you know, and I want to make sure that I'm just like you, being positive and doing my best to help others and help them accomplish what they want to. And I got to make sure that I'm doing that for them now, you know? So as I get a little bit older and as I want to slow down a little bit more and Kyle grows and Dennis grows and more black belts come in and they start to see whatever goals they want. When someone comes out to me and they want more responsibilities, I take myself a little bit out of Logic physically in Philly and I place myself more into the business side of the affiliation. I can focus on that so I don't have to travel as much or whatever it may be. But I mean, it's been great. I think we've got like almost 15 affiliates. I think officially there's like 12 that's announced. There's 3 in the pipeline that are going to be announced very soon, and I'm going to kind of keep it there. And it's really nice to be able to do that. All great human beings, you know. They're not all black belts. They're not all world champions. They're not all people that compete, you know. But they're good human beings with great environments that I truly trust and, you know, believe that they represent the brand. And they're located all over the world, you know, Poland, Ireland. They're located all over the United States, Texas, Atlanta, parts of Ohio, parts of Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. So it's nice to have that, but very fortunate that, you know, Logic had the ability to survive COVID, regardless of my point of view on it. It was challenging, you know, and it was a positive learning lesson. And yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy year, but I know many people had to close down, so that's a little sad, you know, and did my best to try and help out with that aspect as well. But I mean, there were some scary times that we kind of all relied on each other to try and grow and try and create revenue and whatnot. And I'm super blessed to be a part of the jiu-jitsu environment, and people help each other, which is nice. And but yeah, man, I mean, that's Logic is an ongoing running thing. It operates continuously while I'm there and I'm not there, and the quality stays high, and it's nice to see it growing, but it's still a baby, so we'll see where it goes in a couple of years. But yeah.
So the last thing I want to circle back to is you're playing paintball again. So where your story started, for anyone that's listened to this entire podcast, where your story started was you were a standout in paintball and you enjoyed yourself and you found some passion out on there, and now you're back into it. You're leaving for Texas when?
Tomorrow.
Do you leave for Texas tomorrow to go train for an upcoming tournament, right? Texas, so talk a little about what it's been like getting back into paintball and like your perspective now versus, you know, when you were younger.
Yeah, I mean, I had this talk with Ramsdale. He was like, then he, you know, booted me, but I'm like, oh, I've got this like void in me. I've got to compete. I've got to win something, you know, and I've got this goal now where I want to be a two-time world champion in 2 sports, you know. And he was just kind of like, hey, man, like, this up here won't change this down here, you know. Listen to this, don't listen to that. And I'm like, oh, stop, you're going to make me change my mind. But I knew the level of dedication that goes into paintball, and I knew that I could do that fairly, you know. Like, I couldn't train 3 times a day in jiu-jitsu while having an academy, having a wife, having a baby. It was just too much, and I didn't feel confident that I could go out there at that point in time still, because the baby is her age, and win a world title at black belt and be able to do a bunch of things. So I'm like, hey, cool, what can I do? And, you know, and I got back into paintball and just played and practiced and did my best to grow efficiently and catch back up as much as I could, and had the opportunity to go pro and got picked up, and now that's the focal point, which is nice, you know. And what's good is I kind of like mesh it in with my seminar stuff. So I'll go somewhere and then I'll teach on a Thursday or Friday, and then I'll leave and I'll fly, and then I'll come back Sunday night. But I mean, it's really interesting. It's cool. It's nice to be a part of a different culture. But I mean, if it wasn't for, again, the amount of experience that I've gotten from martial arts, jiu-jitsu, MMA, whatever it may be, and the conversations that I've had and the things that I've learned, I would have not even been any remotely close to being able to go back and playing paintball or make it to the level that I did and having the ability to see things the way that I do. Like, it's crazy, because the one thing that's dangerous is like when you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you often feel like you're kind of a black belt in other things, you know. You see it a lot with like, oh, I'm a black belt, so I know what I'm talking about in business. And it's like, well, no, maybe, but that's not an absolute statement, you know. And it was definitely refreshing but challenging to go from being a leader and being an instructor to going to a different environment and seeing what concepts also apply here that are consistent, which ones don't, what habits do I have from jiu-jitsu that are bad for paintball, and vice versa, whatever it may be. And like, It's been absolutely wonderful. It's been super hard work, physically demanding. Like, it's just like, hey, we're gonna play for 6-7 hours and shut your mouth and just do it, you know. And I love the cutthroat about it. But the great thing about jiu-jitsu is that when you go on the mat, it's just you, and you're like, if you're better, you win, and if you're not, you lose, you know. And in paintball, like it is with baseball or hockey and basketball, because of the level of commitment, I can play really well and the team can still lose, or vice versa. And I think that I've been missing that team, that brotherhood a lot. And I think that void that I was looking for, that paintball, the answers for, it's really great. So I enjoy that aspect. I enjoy the accountability that's in there. Where it's like, hey, you're not doing your job. Like, make sure you do it. And if not, you'll fucking sit. And it's like, oh, I missed that kind of talk. So thank you. But yeah, so I mean, it's been great. It's been nice to go back full circle. And again, like just trying to use an example, like, hey, you should always follow your heart and your passion. You know, like 33-year-old dude, I'm definitely, you know, older than a lot of people that are playing paintball and came from another sport, again, whatever it may be. But like, just because you're changing your goals and you're changing your mind, it's not too late, you know. And I try to tell it to my students, like, man, like maybe tomorrow you want to be a black belt, maybe the next day you want to go open up a nonprofit. Like, you can do it at any point in time. Just commit to it and be obsessed with that growth and make sure you're talking to the right people and just do it. So it's nice to lead by example a little bit. I'm still doing that in that sense, but it's been very fulfilling to get back to a spot where I can be a student, which is very nice. And I mean, paintball is doing that for me.
Last thing I'm going to talk to you about is something that I've struggled with. Martial arts creates community, creates family, creates relationships, creates bonds between people. And, you know, generally, if it's done right, it should create like a family feeling, right?
Yep.
But as a business owner, you have a business side of things and you have like the family side of things. And I'm someone that has struggled over the years at separating friendship from business. I absolutely have. Like, I try to do everything as if the person is a friend to me. And if my intent is good to them, then they're going to be good intent back to me. How do you separate, or do you find the same struggle, or do you do a pretty good job of, you can completely treat things as a businessman and then you can treat things as a friendship? Because like there's a blend in martial arts, you know what I mean? I'm very attached to a lot of the people in my life. Like if any of these people called me at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, I'm going to be there for them.
Of course.
And I don't know if they would be there for me, but I make the assumption that they would, you know what I mean?
And I think you do it for you though. That's why, right? You're like, hey, like this is the person I want to be. Right. And I think that's huge. And I think that, you know, in times of challenge and doubt, you have to really focus on like, although I enjoy these people and I love them and I want to do the best for them, but this is who I want to be as a person. I want to be that for that person. And then, like, at the end of the day, when you see it like that, it doesn't even matter who they are, you know, again. So it's hard to balance that. I mean, like, again, like I am not an actual, you are an incredible human being with other people. I hear you talk and people are like, you know, there's like hearts everywhere and they're like, oh, what's going on, you know? And like, I value your communication a lot in terms of how you speak to people and whatnot. Like, you can go give a speech at a graduation at a school and you're like, watch this, you know, and people are like standing ovation, you know, and like you can do that. You're very charismatic. You've got that intoxication to you know, and like I enjoy people. I understand that they're vital for business, you know, but like I don't like human beings at all. It's very tough because I'm like, hey, like you suck. Your communication's awful. If I do something for you, you're like, you could be spiteful. Like there's just no consistency with human beings. But there are really good people out there, you know, and like at the end of the day, what you got to realize is like you always go to bed with yourself at night and you want to be happy, you know. So like I'm sure there's people out there that would feel that at times I've been very cold. And these are probably people that I'm like, hey, like I need to do this for me. There's balance. Like class was over an hour ago. I need to go home and see my family. And I'm sorry that I answered all their questions, but not yours. But now I'm making a stand, you know, and like you just got to communicate that well, you know. But like when I go home, I'm not like questioning myself like, oh, I wonder if Billy's upset with me because I didn't answer his question. I'm like, hey, like I'm doing my best. And like there's just so many of them. There's one of me, and I hope I communicate that well so they understand that too, so we don't have any miscommunication. But like I live my life for me so I can live it for others, you know. But like at some point in time, like I had this conversation with Brandon all the time. You're always in a state of watering your plants, you know. And you can't forget that, like, you got to replenish that water to be able to do it. And at the end of the day, there's so many fucking plants out there that you're watering because of the amount of student base that you have, the amount of reach that you have, the amount of people that you influence. that you'll burn yourself out if you don't have that balance, you know, and like that's crucial. Sometimes I travel for money, sometimes I travel for balance. You know, sometimes I go do something for different reasons, I'm doing the same thing, but like for me, it's like if I can't be who I want to be for myself, there's no way I can be who I need to be for you, you know, and like you're just like, man, you're so, but it's ingrained in you, you know, and I think it's good because at the end of the day, like no matter if you're hurt or if you're not hurt, you're just like, hey, like I still got to be positive because that's who you want to be. So that's who you're going to be, you know? So like, I don't see that as a negative thing. I don't think that's a bad quality. I think it's a great quality. But you have the heart and the ability to endure the possibilities of being hurt and then having to be positive again, you know? And like when I was younger, I didn't. And it made me hard, you know? And I was just kind of like, fuck you, you know? And you had the opportunity plenty of times and that what you experienced as a kid to be like, hey, fuck you. And instead you said, no, you know? So what you did and how you embody that and what you experienced is what created who you were today. And that's why you're a great fucking people person, no matter what life throws at you, you know? No matter what curveballs throws at you, no matter how much someone tries to put you down, you're like, no, because this is my job, you know, this is what I do, this is who I'm happy with being, you know? So it's, and you know that because look at what you have. Like, I wasn't even a part of it way back in the day, but imagine where you started in your basement. And you've got what's the square footage of of MIA?
When it's done, it's going to be just under 20,000 square feet.
Okay. I can't even count the 20,000. And you have 20,000 of that in square feet. And we're in here and you're seeing men, women, children, all sizes, all colors, all races, all shapes, all different goals, all different beliefs, religious backgrounds, tastes in musics, all different lifestyles. And they come here. They don't come here to just work out. Because if they did, they would only do it for so long. They come here because of you and your leadership, because if they're learning from someone else, that person that learned from you is instilling and projecting what you projected to them, you know? So it's like, if you were doing it wrong, if you were doing it incorrectly, you literally would be able to see it in your results. And like I said, it's tough, but like at the end of the day, the people that don't understand, it's like it's not what you're responsible for. But very few people don't understand, you know? And it's like, some people are committed to not understanding. Like, oh, like, James didn't fucking give me the time of day. And it's like, I don't care if he was busy and he needed to go see his family. And it's like, okay, cool. But, like, you understand that. So you're like, hey, I'm still going to be a good human being to you still. You know, it's tough to always turn that potential cold shoulder and just smile, you know, and just like, hey, this is who I want to be. But, I mean, you do a very good job. And if you didn't, like I said, you would, instead of growing, you would be downsizing. Not in terms of physically, I mean, that too, but like you would be reverse engineering who you are as a person. Why is James moving backwards? It's an inclination, right? No, James is moving forward. Look at all the things that you have now compared to what you had a year ago, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Students, what you've accomplished, look at the things you do, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's a great inclination, you know? No one's perfect. We're never going to be perfect, you know? But you're like, hey, I'm doing my best.
Well, man, we have gone an hour effortlessly, no problems.
Easy.
You know, just anything else that you want to capture in this moment in time, you'll have this memory forever. Your daughter will be able to look at this one day and see the man that her father was. And I mean, we're capturing a moment in time. So just anything else you'd want to say, and we'll wrap this thing up.
No, man, I mean, other than that, I appreciate you. I appreciate this opportunity, which is cool. Not just this opportunity, but this opportunity, you know, it's great to, I think it's vital, to grow and to meet people and to experience them and to keep them in your lives and understand that like everything in life, there's things that are out of your control, you know, like you just got to understand, you know, and you got to still smile and be appreciative, you know, but it's nice to sit at the table and talk with you, you know, it's nice to, and even though like we've literally been now, you know, doing our thing, you know, but it's like, I think what's important for people to realize and understand is that there's many different people that sit on this side of the chair, you know, of all different types of occupations, again, gender, thoughts, beliefs, whether they agree with you or disagree with you, you know, and it's nice that it's a safe environment, you know, and again, this is inside MIA, you know, and I think that's huge, and I think that's a great thing to display and to show people that although that we can disagree, that what we can do is create a safe environment for people to still talk and experience each other and to be happy, you know, and like, I really believe that's great, and I think that's what the world needs right now. more than ever, you know. And I mean, there's not a billion people that are gonna watch us, you know, but like, it's nice to have that type of feeling and that type of engagement with you, because that's not really what's common right now in the world. And I mean, like, yeah, it's COVID, but like, it goes back whatever it may be, and it's like, I hope people use this opportunity and challenge of COVID to come out of it with a reward and growth as best as they can, you know. And I hope they see things in a way that they didn't see. Was been a year now, you know. But other than that, man, I just appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity. It means a lot to me to be on here, to be here with you, to be, again, being able to have the trust in sharing some of my knowledge with your children and students, you know. So it means a lot. I'm super appreciative. So thank you.
Man, I mean, I would agree with you. COVID's actually made a lot of people level up. All the best people in my life that I know have leveled up. I mean, this podcast was created because of COVID. I was like, man, people need dialogue now more than ever. People need to get back to talking to each other, need to get back 100%. To communicating together, need to drop some of the hate and animosity, which you can just do through understanding and through information. So, you know what? We always level up, you know, if we go for it. So
100%.
So, man, truly a pleasure today, and we'll wrap this thing up.